And we are loading up now. All right, here comes the draft screen. So, like I was saying, if I'm inside Electroid and I see what's basically been coming out of Ice, it's more or less been push bans, and they are going to be very courteous and go ahead and ban out the same ban that they had done before, the Lycan. I assume that the Krob ban is going to come out here from Ice, but maybe not. They might decide to change it up. Either way, yeah, there's the Krob ban. So both teams being courteous and not taking advantage of that time.
We see the Wisp ban coming out quickly as a respect to the last game.
Yes.
I thought it was odd that Inside Electroid gave Ice first and second pick again, but we see the Tidehunter now again out of Inside Electroid. Clearly a hero they favor.
Yeah, this is an Inside Electroid once again going for the Tidehunter, who honestly... First of all, Tidehunter on the Radiant side is not nearly as strong as Tidehunter on the Dire side, because he doesn't really have access to stacking those Ancients, which means that if he doesn't have a good early game in that off lane, he doesn't really do very much for a very long time. The other thing is, once again, if I'm inside Electroid, I'm thinking, all right, Ice is banning out a lot of push heroes through last game and this game. They got their momentum by shutting down our potential push and picking us apart. We should draft push. And Tidehunter, he's got that nice initiation for tower fighting, but in and of himself, he doesn't really provide very much to a push.
He at least gives you the ability to fight around a tower if you have Ravage up. The problem I always have with that plan is that the cooldown on Ravage is not very favorable to that sort of strategy if you draft anything else. But it looks like with the Razor pickup, we're seeing a much more team fight focused lineup from Inside Electroid than we were the last time. But the wild card pick here for Ice will probably be this Doom. Because Doom can be put in a lot of places, and he works very well against both Tidehunter and Razor.
Mm-hmm. One of the reasons that he works so well is because Doom is not a silence, it's a mute, which Razor is not really horrifically item dependent, but Tidehunter tends to be. He wants to have that Blink Dagger. More importantly, he's very dependent on that Kraken Shell to keep him up. And Kraken Shell will not remove Doom because it is muted while Doom is on him. So Doom a very nice shutdown potential against that Tidehunter. And they are themselves, Ice, going to grab that Shadow Shaman. Presumably they're thinking about maybe doing a little pusheroonie themselves. Get a quick game 2 victory out and call it a day. Grab some pizza or something.
From the bans of Inside Electroid here, to me, seem very focused again on shutting down Ice's early game. The Tinker and the Brewmaster would be two heroes they would definitely want to pick if they wanted to go early. So it almost looks like Inside Electroid is going to try to force this game out to a 30-40 minute game as opposed to the previous one that may well have been sub 20. But Ice gets their Skywrath Mage again. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen a respect ban yet out on the 122's NP coming out of IE here. They're leaving it to him again. And the draft they're setting up is one in which NP, they could just as well do the exact same NP strat from the previous game if they chose to do it, but it looks like they've got something else in mind.
Yeah, I don't really know that the Skywrath is necessary in this game, but because it was so effective at just shutting down Inside Electroid in general, I don't see why they wouldn't want to draft it. But if I'm Inside Electroid, honestly, I would have been more concerned about the Skywrath than I would have been about the Io. Io was very effective last game, but he's not hard as a hero to understand and play for. You just make sure everybody's moving in pairs and try to group up as much as you can. The Skywrath is a little bit more difficult to deal with if you are a squad that is going to be moving in and trying to do any sort of strategic positioning, because Skywrath has that big AoE deny range that is very spammable, so he can basically control the ebb and flow of where heroes are going to be forced to move, which is favorable for, working alongside somebody like a Shadow Shaman who has to place his ult in one spot, working alongside somebody often like a Witch Doctor or like a Pugna. All these heroes that have skills which are location-based, wards specifically. Skywrath Mage works very well with them because he can kind of funnel your opponents in the direction of those wards, kind of like a sheepdog.
It seems like what Ice is trying to do, if you look at their last two bans, they've taken out AA and they've taken out Wraith King. It looks from this to me like they are trying to put the entire initiation for Inside Electroid onto the shoulders of Tidehunter, who would have to initiate through a Doom and a Skywrath Silence as well if he wants to do that. The Sand King here seems to be from IE is another way around that problem by giving different ways to initiate despite Doom and Skywrath Silence. But the issue with this is that this is still a very initiation heavy lineup. I don't think if IE does get jumped at any point, I don't think Sand King or Tidehunter really will be of much help to them when it comes to trying to defend against the incoming push through the Shadow Shaman and the Doom.
Yeah, I don't really know that Sand King is the answer to a lot here because last game Ice played very aggressively and shut Inside Electroid down really honestly by about 8 minutes. They were more or less shut down. Sand King and Tidehunter are both very greedy heroes for the early game. They both really want to Blink Dagger before they're very effective. Tidehunter will sometimes go for a mechanism instead. But now you've got two heroes on the board who are not farming heroes that need to wait till they can get up at least Brown Boots and a Blink Dagger before you can really feel comfortable doing a lot of engaging. And the amount of time that takes, I feel like Inside Electroid is risking being shut down again.
Well, this Disruptor pick from IE is confusing to me because Disruptor works best if you have some way of forcing the enemy team to directly retreat. So perhaps the plan is simply to go Sand King Ultimate into Disruptor, Glimpse back, and Trap. But if you do that, Viper and Doom don't care.
Yeah.
Viper can just tank it completely. Doom has a bit more difficulties than Viper, but it is, again, another target for Skywrath or Doom that you would have to shut down in a team fight. So perhaps they really are trying to go for a team fight in a subtly different way. But Sand King and Disruptor may not have been the most ideal ways to go about this.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, they're so greedy, and it seems like what ICE is doing is just drafting faster heroes. Like I would say that if Viper and Skywrath ever start roaming, they will find Sand King and kill him before he can get a Blink Dagger going.
Yeah,
and Disruptor is not going to have a prayer either.
Even if Inside Electroid executes this team fight strategy very well, they're going to use a lot of their cooldowns. It's very difficult to stagger and win a fight, but also not use more than two of your cooldowns. Phantom Assassin is a classic snowball hero. This is a hero that's very easy to shut down if you do very well, and you just don't give her a level advantage over your own heroes, a gold advantage over your own heroes. But Ice feels very confident that this Phantom Assassin pick just tells you that Ice thinks that they're going to get off to a very early lead and that they're going to hold that lead for a long time, which is really the period where Phantom Assassin shines. Inside Electroid, even if they do manage to execute perfectly every single time these team fights, they don't really have a lot that they can capitalize on that. Like, even if they wipe Ice 2 or 3 times in the early game, they're not going to be able to take towers on that. And they don't have enough late game to go up against a Doom, Viper, Phantom Assassin at the moment. I don't really know that Inside Electroid has a strong central strategy to the draft right now.
The other, yes and no. They're clearly looking for team fight.
Yes.
But they've drafted so much magic damage based in a team fight, and this Mirana is not the best answer for what I'm about to say either. But PA builds a BKB almost immediately. When that BKB is complete, none of Ice's heroes will be able to shut down the PA. PA can just ignore most of it, walk in, and hope for a crit. And with Shadow Shaman, Skywrath, and Viper standing on the lines soaking up damage, and hopefully Doom as well, he's going to get the time he needs to pray for a crit.
Yeah. And also bear in mind that the Viper is going to be able to knock down towers very effectively with the Nether Toxin. The Shadow Shaman's able to knock down towers very effectively with the Serpent Wards. And I don't really have any way to do that. So even if they're able to take team fights, it's like, oh, great, you can take team fights while the rest of our team is just going to respawn and go and push down towers. Ice has a fallback plan. I don't feel like IE does.
IE has got to group, it's got to be effective, and it's got to happen fast.
Yeah.
It's just they are grouping into a Silence, a Skywrath ult, Doom, Shadow Shaman wards, and a very tanky Viper who's already started off with a headdress. So he's clearly looking for a very fast mechanism. He's probably going to get it. And even more true, if they do catch Mirana, Sand King, or Disruptor now, nope, both sides are just going to walk past each other. So it seems clear at this stage that Ice may be coming into the game and out of the drafting phase. Ice may be slightly ahead here.
Yeah,
the grouping has got to be effective from IE, and it has got to happen fast.
I think Ice has really just answered what IE has very well, but it's obviously all games are dependent on execution. I'm not a believer in drafts losing games entirely. Unlike a lot of my caster friends who think like, oh, you give me the draft and 3 times out of 4 I'll be able to tell you who wins. There's so much execution that's involved that, I mean, IE could come out of this with great team fight execution. They could just shut down Ice so much that the snowball heroes don't snowball. because of that strong team fight execution, and then they'll be able to just push down towers by the mere virtue of having 5 heroes. They don't need great tower push if they do have 5 heroes. I've got to say, I'm not a big fan of what Ice has done here, which is run an aggressive tri-lane but still block the pull. There's really no reason to block the pull if you run an aggressive tri-lane, in my opinion. They do have really great vision, though, so that is going to help them with the rotations. All right, I'm going to go ahead and throw over to you so you can run through our players over on IE before we get too involved in this game.
In IE, we have Thamu playing the Mirana, Thumbski on the Razor, Mogwai is playing the Sand King, Mushimu is on the Disruptor, and Johnzilla is back on his Tidehunter.
All right, and for Ice, we do have in planar on that Mortrid, otherwise known as the Phantom Assassin. Up here in the top lane, we do have Bean dooming it up with that Doom Bringer. We've got Katsu taking the Shadow Shaman, and it's Sole-chan kun senpai-sama on the Skywrath Mage, and taking the firing position. It's 1-2-2, making a sick on the Viper. So already some aggressive positioning coming out of Ice, and just look at everything that Ice has done. They have blocked every single camp on the eastern side of their opponent's jungle.
This is done normally when you do an aggro tri-lane against a lineup this early, that is as early game focused as IE's is. You are trying to shut down the rotation simply by putting so many bodies in the lane that if they do rotate, they lose the lane immediately. And with this, IE has basically put all of their teamfight heroes into a position where Ice has put all of their teamfight focused heroes into an aggro tri-lane and is forcing IE to deal with this. No. And admittedly, this causes some problems for the PA in mid, because if Razor ever does get a halfway decent static link off, PA does not have many good responses to that. And he's getting one now.
A very nice static link. I mean, PA, she hasn't gotten it, but the blink is a pretty nice escape. So Razor's range is not that tremendous. That as long as PA is kind of playing it safe, more or less near the tower, when the creeps come up, she'll be able to save herself. Razor doesn't usually burst her down so much, you know?
He's not doing that to kill her. He's doing it because he wants to get an advantage in the lane. And he is, surprisingly, PA is holding his own here, though Razor did admittedly just go and check for a rune, which has slowed it down. But normally you would see that play done by a Razor just to try to win the lane very hard.
Yeah, and I think Razor, in most situations, would be expected to win this lane. Like, I don't think that this is a lane that you would expect a Mortrid to win, because she is melee and because that static link is so strong against melee heroes. But as long as she's not dying, she's getting what she needs to get out of the lane. She's getting the experience that she can then go in and rotate from. There are some just matchups that you go into and you say, all right, we're probably not going to win this lane. As long as we don't lose it too hard, we consider it a wash. Sort of how you used to see the offlaner, right? The offlaner before it was considered like, the offlaner's our playmaker. It used to be like, okay, the offlaner's going to lose this lane, and we're just going to draft such strong lanes everywhere else that we're going to plan for that. And I feel like Mortrid is one of the heroes that, in a lot of cases, you plan a Mortrid to kind of lose the lane, and then you plan on making it up later with kills.
You would, yes, but with regarding kills, both of the supports for IE have got to defend this bottom lane, because they are relying very heavily on Mirana's damage, and Mirana right now is not really getting all that much out of this lane. Yeah. He has one last hit compared to 19 for Viper.
I also... Oh, go ahead. Finish your thought.
So at this rate, there is really no way IE will be able to recover and get the experience they need on the supports or the ganks needed to actually secure a kill in mid or top. Tidehunter's not going to kill Doom, though he's got Doom low, but Doom has all the answers to that he needs. PA is going to be more or less fine. He's going to lose... He will be out CS'd by Razor, but he probably won't die. There really is no fear here PA should have about anything Razor can do. And because the camp blocks that Ice has thrown up also give them very good vision of the jungle. But right now, that was a good steal on the rune. That secured his escape because Sand King is coming. But now Ice should be moving in on this. They have 3-on-2 because they saw Sand King in mid, but they're letting him come back for free.
I want to also touch on the fact that these wards are very strong. Like, out of Ice, we mentioned that they're there, but we didn't really mention what they're doing. The Sand King can't stack the jungle, which means the Sand King can't get that Blink Dagger up. That's a very effective way to shut down the Sand King, and also it's a very effective way to shut down rotations, because if the Sand King can't be in the jungle, that means that he can't be getting anything out of his travel time. A lot of times you'll see the Sand King stack up these camps over here on his way to go gank somewhere else, and then he'll come back and make up the lost time that he had from the travel by clearing off the stack with the Sandstorm later on. And he can't do that as long as all those camps are blocked.
Well, he could go and stack the hard camp if he chose,
Right.
but that would put him so far away from the tri lane that they would both lose. So the real threat from Ice here is Ice is more or less daring Sand King to go and stack something.
Right. They're basically forcing him to make a decision. You can either have a 3-on-2 lane down here in the bottom that we will inevitably win, or you can try
to... since the support is Disruptor.
Yeah.
He's not going to offer much to this lane.
Yeah. So we will definitely win this lane if you leave your Sand King. Or you can have your Sand King so underfarmed that in the mid game he's not going to do very much, but he might be able to provide enough of a presence in lane to give the Mirana a little bit of farm, which honestly he's not doing. The Sand King, because he's melee, because he's low leveled, he's still level 1 in fact. The Burrow Strike is basically a negligible skill at this level unless you have another stun to set it up. It's not really that strong of an engagement move. And he can't move in on a lane that has both a Skywrath and a Shadow Shaman, two extremely strong ranged heroes.
Thumbski, that's the wrong way. You don't want to run
there.
Oh,
Thumbski is going to find himself hexed out. There's a double damage up on Katsu as well. There's going to be the Shackles, and it looks like the Skywrath Mage is going to wait up for another Arcane.
He's coming
there
in
it
soon.
is.
Yep, got him.
Planer is going to help clean that up, and all of a sudden, we're in a situation where the Phantom Assassin, thanks to that rotation, not only is going to break even in this lane, but very well could win this lane in 4 or 5 minutes when the lanes start to break down. We could be looking back on this Mortured lane and say that gank gave him the lane in a situation where he really shouldn't have won the lane at all.
He more or less is winning the lane simply because his tri-lane is doing so much work at just pinning the supports here. And the other advantage they have is that Ice just sent both of their supports away from the tri-lane. The very thing we were saying IE needs to do, Ice did it instead, and they did it faster.
Yep.
Because they know they can leave Viper, he'll be fine on his own. As Sand King now tries to do anything he can, Tidehunter Ravage.
Yeah, that huge Ravage comes out, and that is going to be 2 heroes down. That was an engagement that Ice really didn't want to move into, and they kind of ran into it nose first and got swatted immediately for it. They're actually going to dive as well. So, Tide is going to dive the tier 2 even, but that's going to cost him Thampu, almost certainly. There's going to be the Moonlight Shadow. It should not be enough, but it will be! No auto attacks to follow, and it does look like the Skywrath is going to chase out the direction that he suspects it's going to go. And Mogwai is going to come in and throw out that stun, but now, I don't know that this was the best call for Mogwai, because up to that point, there was no way for the Skywrath to know for sure that he was on the right path, and that is going to be a death for Mogwai. And now the Skywrath Mage is going to pay his life for chasing so far. Now Thumbski is going to go ahead and try to get a kill on Planer. He does have a very nice damage deal going on here, and he will have a rotation coming out of 1-2-2.
That static link may have been the only thing that saved him. He probably would have died to the PA without that, so very well played. But out of all this, Doom has still just been sitting top farming. He did not go to that engagement.
Yeah, not only that, he's been playing a little bit of pressure on this tower, so he is not a quick pusher by any means. He just kind of swings that big flaming sword very slowly and methodically, but if you leave him up there long enough, that tower will drop, especially with that catapult wave coming in. We're going to see 1-2-2 actually taking a lot of damage coming out of John Zilla, who has been rotated down to be the primary handler of this lane, it looks like. Mirana's going to go ahead and throw out a Sacred Arrow. Way too shallow, though. In plain sight, nonetheless. There's going to be an additional slow coming out of the Tidehunter, but... Alright, Mogwai's going to come in here with a very nice stun. There's a leap for the additional attack damage, but there's no return leap now. And the Mirana's going to die. There was absolutely no escape mechanism for her. The Mushimu is going to go ahead and miss that kinetic field, and then Planer is going to get another kill. Try to back out as that Thunder is striking down.
And again, this is the problem with the IE setup here. Because they had to keep both supports in, Sand King is only level 3 and Disruptor's only level 4. So compared to a Skywrath that's also 4, and a level 5 Shadow Shaman. So this match is more or less going to turn on the supports and how soon they can get leveled. That's not really an insult to IE supports. Mogwai has been playing exceptionally well in these team fights. For as far behind as he is, to have the impact he has shows his great skill as a player.
Right, but it's not about whether or not you can have the impact. It's about whether or not you can keep the impact. That is really what Dota is about. And it gets to the heart of what you were saying. Like, they will continue to fall off. It'll be harder and harder for them to make the impact that they need to make. There's going to be the Moonlight Shadow, a big Ravage to come. There's some vision. It will hit
Catches
3,
4 out
4.
of 5. Oh dear, there they go.
Mechanism already up, and it will be used. Katsu taking a fair amount of damage. He's going to go down. Now Thamo is also going to go down. 1-2-2 is taking a huge amount of damage zap And it looks like Bean is going to be paying the price for that. He's taking a few auto attacks. Planer just standing there. He was a bit AFK, and he does disconnect. That is very unfortunate for him because he is now caught. He does have a Phantom Strike, so he can move over to 1-2-2 if that silence doesn't come out, and Disruptor does not have the ultimate yet because he's only level 4. So this should not be a dead Phantom Assassin, but all things said and done, that worked out very well for IE. That could have gone a lot worse. They actually managed to get themselves in despite the fact that there was Vision sitting there with the True Sight.
I want to make special mention of what IE is doing here, specifically John Zilla on the Tidehunter. Because both of their supports are so far behind, he is having to play the role more or less of a support, and every time Ravage is up, they're looking to take a team fight immediately with it. That's about the only way they really have to guarantee that Sand King and Disruptor catch back up without exposing themselves to undue risk, which Ice's lineup can definitely take advantage of if they do catch out, say, a Sand King trying to stack the jungle a bit too much. Because right now, Ice has been having 3 or 4 heroes running through the jungle, staying in the safe lane, or in the off lane, ready to go and look in the jungle if they even get the vague sense Sand King is there. They've also blocked this pole camp, that pole camp there as well, with a ward, but they see that it is stacked, so they will know if Sand King is there looking for it.
Yeah, this is... There is going to be the reconnect here, and we should see, presumably, the escape of the Phantom Assassin coming out right now. A little bit of a crash, and we should be getting back in very shortly. Here's the unpause. And, oh, the stun comes out first, though, and now 1-2-2 is going to try to come in and do some auto attacks. Mogwai is taking a fair amount of damage. Bean will be going down. Mushimu trying to come in as well. He should probably start to back up a little bit, just in case this fight goes wrong. His auto attacks aren't worth that much. John Zilla, though, doing a fair amount of damage. He will still be going down, and that is the Disruptor going down as well. That's exactly what I was talking about, right? The Disruptor had already spent his load. He had all of his skills down. He had no mana. His auto attacks do basically nothing. At that point in time, just turn tail and run. And if your team prevails, great. If your team doesn't prevail, there's nothing you could have done about it anyway. Instead, he stays a little bit too long, loses some gold. So he did have a lot of unreliable gold when he died, I suspect. And also handing over a pretty solid bounty. Katsu is going to go down here, it looks like. Yep. Brought down by a chicken here in the mid lane.
This has been a series of very good plays from both teams, with the exception of that last play from IE, in which they pushed the fight just a little bit too far and got penalized for it. I don't think they knew that Doom had a Blink Dagger at that point, because Doom got a lot of distance out of blinking in and then using the Thunderclap that he's stolen from a creep. So that was a very wise play he made there to do that and come back into the fight, knowing he was probably going to go down at the process, but knowing he would also create so much space for his team that Ice's rather aggressive lineup could simply turn around and go right back in again, as you mentioned, the 2 supports were done.
Yeah.
And so very well played.
That's a very important thing to keep in mind in these sorts of games, is that there is especially early, especially when you have under-farm supports, like a 5 and 4 support 4 and 5 slots. They have the same levels as their numbers, in fact, of slot. At 12 minutes, that's very under-farmed up against the 6 and 6 lowest heroes coming out of Ice, 11 for the highest coming out of Ice. Way too large of a differential for those supports to really survive. Their mana pools are thin, and ooh, Cats are going to walk right into a pretty long arrow. However, the Doom comes out of Bean immediately with that blink. That shouldn't have caught Thamo off guard that early. Thamo is going to try to back up. Presumably, there's going to be an attempt on a deny here if she does get low enough. Thumbski taking a little bit of damage as he's moved on. Katsu is going to go ahead and throw down that Shackles. He will be going down. And the nice Ravage turns this fight around. 1-2-2. Is going to get himself at least one more kill before moving in. And I do not know what that Skywrath was doing there, but he gets shot down by the Tidehunter. He just kind of rolled on by and dared the Tidehunter to kill him, and Tidehunter had absolutely no qualms doing so. A very nice turning engagement for IE. Once again, considering they are at such a level disadvantage, they're making the most out of a fairly small amount of potential that their heroes have.
Well, they also recognize that if Ice is still going to hesitate in buying detection just simply to get through the Mirana ult, they're just going to keep using it. This has happened 2 or 3 times now where Mirana ult happens, Tidehunter walks in and ravages, and there is still no counter yet coming out of this from Ice, which really this is IE's only way to win a fight, is to Moonlight Shadow into Ravage and then hope everything goes your way from there.
Yeah, especially because Sand King doesn't have an ult up yet. Disruptor doesn't have an ult up yet. This is... Actually, Disruptor got his ult up during that fight, but The one thing that Ice has been doing a very good job of is dropping sentry wards wherever they think a fight is going to happen. The problem is they're not dropping them far enough into the fights for them to have a warning bell for when the Tidehunter's coming in. They see the Tidehunter right before the Ravage comes out because he always ravages right on the edge of that vision. But they don't see him coming, so they can't silence him, they can't stun him. They just have a moment to kind of brace themselves and prepare for impact, which is not ideal.
They really do need dust. Like you're correct in saying they've been dropping a lot of sentry wards, but it seems like IE is always just saying they've warded here, let's back up, let's fight somewhere slightly different, then let's go for it then. We see a Doom on Razor, and this is going to be an interesting engagement here. Tide does not have Ravage.
Yeah, and they know Tide doesn't have Ravage.
Yes.
There we
Razor
go.
is probably dead.
Some more auto attacks coming out. There's going to be the nice silence, first use of the game coming out of the Disruptor, and that is going to kind of kill the momentum for Ice, that with the kinetic field. Mogwai is going to go ahead and Burrow Strike into the jungle just for safety because he knows he is surrounded by enemies. He's going to be found out by Katsu here. He's going to try to go invisible, but immediate ward drop by Katsu just to make sure that there's vision. He's still not going to be able to get that Shackles off, which means there is not going to be the follow-up. The concussive shot hits him for the slow, but that's going to be about it.
Now, one thing also worth mentioning here is that PA is closing in on his BKB. When he gets that, I don't know what IE has to counter that. They don't have anything that goes through BKB. They are more or less going to hope PA doesn't crit them to death while they try to kill him, but they really don't have a lot of damage unless Razor gets a very good static link off.
Right, getting static link off is key for that. Unfortunately, they're really far behind at this point. Once again, we're at 15 minutes, and they're about 10,000 gold in lead. Or ISIS, excuse me, about 10,000 gold in lead. And they're about 5,000 experience in lead, which means that a lot of the things that you would normally want. Oh, nice arrow coming out here as the Moonlight Shadow goes in. The Ravage is going to be there. That's a very nice play coming out of IE. There's going to be the Skywrath trying to throw out the Mystic Flare before he goes down. 3 down for Ice. It looks like 122 is standing in the wards, just being protected. But Mort is coming in, and she is the cleanup crew. Going to be forced back. She's going to run back in. Thumbski got his ult up, and he is going to run the other way, and very noble play coming out of the Tidehunter. He does have that Aegis, but trying to drag his opponents away from his carry, and he's hoping to get away. He will actually be able to TP away. That's a pretty good engagement for IE. 3 heroes, they deny an Aegis, and they don't really lose any. I guess they lost the Mirana. But considering that sort of engagement, that should have gone much worse.
That was about the best IE could have hoped for in that situation. It was really a very risky Roshan from Ice. They really didn't have a lot of vision on their enemies at the time when they went in. I think they were trying just to hope to force it, because I think, as you mentioned, they are ahead, and I think they know that.
Oh, yeah, they've got to know that. I mean, their mechanism came out like 7 minutes ahead. Of their opponents. They had a Blink Dagger up before their opponents even all had boots. Before their opponents had ultimates even, they had a Blink Dagger up on Doom. So that's a pretty good sign that you're in the lead.
Yes, but they seem to they may have thought they were slightly too far ahead.
Yeah.
In a way, it seems like I don't know about that play, because it seems like they underestimated IE's team fight. And despite what we've been saying about their difficulties in this game, IE has shown that if they do get a team fight, they will be perfectly capable of executing it. Every team fight they have had where they had a chance, they came out equal or ahead.
Yeah, the problem is
forcing that was maybe not the best play Ice could have gone for.
Yeah, it also
since PA didn't have BKB at the time.
There was a very nice Aegis snatch there, which turned that fight in a big way as well. So that was pretty well played by the Tidehunter. I will point out, though, that Ice, even if they force out a bad engagement like that, it's a long time before Mogwai is just going to go down. No big deal. It's a long time before IE is able to engage another one of those, because they're so cooldown dependent for those big engagements that even if Ice says, okay, we're going to force a team fight and we're going to lose it, they then have 120 seconds or so to go in and get objectives, which means that they can still come out the winners from a losing. And look, another hero blown up and a tier 1. They can come out the winners out of a losing engagement based on the following 120 seconds, which is kind of a roundabout way of getting an advantage. But if you know, like, okay, we'll run in, we'll soak up all their ultimates, and we'll just die. But we're so far ahead, and we're so much better at taking objectives that because we'll soak up all their ultimates and all their skills, we'll just respawn quickly and just drill through them. That is a legitimate strategy, and that's exactly what we're seeing.
Yes, they recognize again that it all comes down to Tidehunter's Ravage. That was on cooldown because he just used it at the Aegis Snatch. Now they group up, they take a tower, they back off, and now they actually start to chase Mirana away. Famu has just not had the best game right now. He's 5-3-4, which is not bad, but he was in theory in safe lane, and he only has 43 last hits. He's well behind Viper, behind Doom, and very, very far behind the PA. And PA just got his BKB and hasn't yet had to use it, which means that in this next fight, someone is on IE, will die to a crit, notwithstanding anything else that may occur in the fight.
Right.
The 10-second BKB guarantees him that he will get at least one person in the fight, unless he just has the worst luck in the world.
Right, unless he just gets absolutely shot down and he has all his damage stolen by the Razor, which is key. The Razor needs to get that static link off before the BKB. It's absolutely necessary.
Well, he needs to also be able to deal damage afterward, because IE's lineup lacks a lot of very direct damage.
Yeah.
Without that, the Mirana was probably the best call they could have made if they wanted to keep their teamfight-centric plan going. But Mirana doesn't really do a lot of damage, and certainly not for someone who has BKB.
Later on, she'll end up doing quite a bit of damage. I mean, even right now, she's swinging a kind of heavy stick. She's hitting for over 100 per pop, which is, comparable to what the Viper is doing if you exclude Nether Toxin. It's comparable to what the Phantom Assassin is doing, maybe at about 75% of what the Phantom Assassin is doing, if you exclude Coup de Grace. But the problem is, and also bearing in mind that Phantom Assassin is much more farm. BKB comes out, the static link is there, but Mort is just going to run away, turn around. That is going to buy time for 1-2-2 to go down, however. And now in Planer is thinking about trying to run away. He's on the chopping block a little bit. The Shadow Shaman is turning back. There's going to be the glimpse.
There's the glimpse.
And the stun.
Nice,
the BKB's already down,
stun.
and some additional damage going out. The Ravage is going to be there as well. Beam now taking a lot of damage. The wards are down, and they're doing a fair amount of damage. Meanwhile, the Skywrath Mage coming in from the low ground, trying to get it from the river. That is not going to be a very effective ulti, however. Tidehunter once again dragging the rest of the heroes away from his team, so his team can get away. And Mogwai not really getting that memo. Kind of staying a little bit too close to the fight. Once again, that's a pretty good engagement for IE, all things considered. They suckered out a BKB charge from the Phantom Assassin and still got the kill. They got 2-4-1. Problem is they used every single ultimate that they have, and now the respawn timers are still so low that ICE is going to be able to capitalize on that. If this were happening 15 minutes from now, IE would be doing stellar, because ICE would not be able to have the time to capitalize on objectives because cooldown timers would have been so much longer. But because cooldown timers are so short at 20 minutes, doesn't make a difference for ICE. They go, all right, well, we'll just engage and lose, and it doesn't matter because we'll just go take a tower, we'll go pick somebody off, while they have no defensive capabilities whatsoever.
ICE is again beginning to underestimate IE's team fight, it seems. In that case, Phantom Assassin was more or less on his own, confronting 4 IE heroes. He had to BKB, even only just to give himself the chance of getting away. And then the rest of his team trickled in and died as a result of it. But as you mentioned, they're coming right back. The BKB charge is also nearly back. He's working towards PA is looking towards a basher, I would guess to be a basher. He's got the javelin now. When he gets that, it'll be good. But the important thing to remember about that fight is that Mirana wasn't there. Yes, he threw the Moonlight Shadow, but he was pushing in mid. He's gotten some decent damage on the mid tier 1 tower for what he had to work with at that fight, particularly given that he has low mana and can't clear out creeps as quickly as he might otherwise want to. So this game is more or less equal if IE plays it perfectly, or if ICE makes a mistake. I would say that ICE is still ahead.
Oh yeah, they're very ahead. I mean, just in terms of metrics. But just look at the gold though. They're 12,000 in the lead. They're 5,000 experience in the lead. And yes, they just lost the fight, but they're going to be able to capitalize on that right now. You see them amassing mid. They lost the fight, but they didn't lose the war on that one. I think that fight is actually going to, in the end, actually end up favoring them because they only were down 1 relative hero. But they're going to be up a tower out of it and possibly a couple of heroes here if IE tries to engage without their ultimates. So
it looks like they're just going to let the tier 2 go, in fact, and just
which is probably the best move. That's probably the best move that they can make right now. They know that they can't take this fight without the ultimate. So once again, that's an engagement that ICE barely lost, but they're going to get another huge bounty of gold off of it. They're going to get the last bastion of map control that IE has in this entire section of the map. And they did it all by trading off a 2-for-1 heroes exchange. So I would argue that ICE won that one in the big picture. They only lost it if you look at the 30 seconds of that fight. If you look at the 30 seconds before and the minute and 30 seconds after, that fight really favored them pretty heavily.
Ice is doing the smart thing now and continuing to group as 5, taking lanes, taking towers, going in when they know the ults are down. As you say, IE does have to spend a lot to win a fight, but we're just now starting to see...
Thumbski is going to take a fair amount of damage here, though. A huge first hit, coup de grace, and that is going to be dead, Thumbski. Yep.
That probably won't be Rax, but it definitely will be the tier 2. Ice could probably even look to go high ground with that, but Roshana's respawning very quickly.
So
they may look to just go there afterward.
Because they know that all the ultimates are up, so it's like, yeah, they could try to high ground, but if they try to high ground right now and they get shat on by all the ultimates and have a lot of trouble, there's no re-engagement potential. With buybacks, there's no re-engagement potential coming out of Ice because they're so far away. If they go back and try to take Roshan right now, even if they lose a fight there, there's some potential for re-engagement because they have a very nice TP spot right there. So I think that's probably where they want the next big team fight to be. They might be at the point in time where respawn timers are becoming too long and the fights are so far away from their fountain that it might no longer be that economical for them to be like, all right, well, we might lose a fight, but we'll win the fight afterward. Because the fight afterward, the ultimates might actually be up again. Roshan is up. They know it's up, or they will know it's up very soon. I suspect that's their next target.
They probably will be going for that, but they're quickly starting to run out of items on everyone except the PA. Like, it's very hard to see, for example, what Viper really needs at this point, outside of maybe Boots of Travel and some other items, though it seems like Pink is scribbling on the map to push all lanes in, so it looks like we'll see a Roshan happening quickly.
Yeah. And why not? They're in the lead. They have complete map control. They know that if they lose a fight here, I mean, just taking a look at the buybacks, we've got a buyback on Viper and a buyback on Doom, which are the two arguably most important, maybe the Phantom Assassin, but Phantom Assassin probably won't be dying in a fight. So the two heroes that you want the buyback on the most have it for this. So even if they lose a fight here, they know that they can buy back and then re-engage.
IE is playing scared, not going for it, despite that looks like they're smoking and going in, but they're smoking and going in, but they may actually get there in time.
They'll get there in time because it's just
okay, they see it. Katsu's going to go down. Now, can they finish Roshan this time? No, it doesn't look like it.
No, because once again, PA, I don't think that they know, actually, because PA's doing it alone, right? So all the rest of the heroes are up here in this engagement, and this is a really nice, just sort of distraction tactic. Ice is going to lose a couple of heroes here. They might actually take a couple of heroes as well. Bean is taking a fair amount of damage, and PA has enough time to get the Aegis and turn around. So yeah, I mean, Ice lost a couple of heroes in that, but they knew that they were taking unfavorable engagement. Okay, the Viper is painful. If they lost 3 heroes, I would say that's potentially worth it because now they can high ground. Losing 4 heroes for that Aegis, probably not worth it. They're also going to lose the tier 2 tower, and that's going to help Ice clear the difference a little bit and try to start balancing out their checkwork. They're not going to lose the tower, actually. They're scared of just Phantom Assassin. There are 5 of them, and they are scared of PA alone. That boggles my mind.
They don't have health. They don't have ultimates. It's probably a wise idea just to back and stop things from getting any worse. I want to make special mention of Thumbski's Razor here, because despite the difficulties, and as we've mentioned repeatedly, he needs Static Link to go off in a fight if IE is to stand a chance of winning. But despite a BKB and a Doom on
the
him,
courier up here in the top! It ends up being the distraction that he needs. He gets the courier, uses it, micros it, the Skywrath turns to attack it, and then he gets away. No problem at all with that TP, and a little bit of help coming out of the Fog of War.
This man is the evil genius of the game. He's managed to get Static Link off on crucial targets through a Doom and through a BKB on the one hero he desperately wants to link more than any other. Yeah. He's playing insanely well. He's largely one of the reasons IE is still in this game, but IE's coordination has just been very good, and Thumbski is playing exceptionally well within the confines of what he needs to do.
Yeah, Thumbski, the one problem that he's had, he's being caught out here, which is not a bit trouble, yeah. There's going to be the glimpse defensively coming out of Mushimu, and the silence to try and, bail an attack, but it does not matter.
He gets it.
Yeah, Plander's going to just go ahead and use that coup de grace from the outside thanks to that blink strike, but I will say that the one problem that the Razor had, which really hurt his team, is that he just didn't farm very well. He was not on top of his last hits through the early game, and he came out of that lane very far behind the PA. By the end of the laning phase, he was at about half the PA's net worth. Granted, some of that was the fact that the towers were dropping in favor of Ice and not dropping in favor of IE, but whatever the case, he did not end up getting the farm that he needed. They are going to go ahead and grab themselves a quick tower here, as it does look like Mirana's trying to do some split pushing. There's going to be the Sand King throwing out an ulti. And he will be immediately turned into Crab Stew, and that's a tier 3. High ground is pushed. There's going to be a Ravage, but there's really no follow-up. Yonzilla going in by himself. And this is going to be a complete team wipe, and this is probably going to be the game. That was a really anticlimactic way to break the high ground. It's just everybody kind of stumbling in, half drunk, hungover, and throwing out their ultimates kind of at random. The coordination that you were saying that IE had and they have had through this game was not there for that fight, and that was when they desperately needed it.
Well, as we've been saying, PA has his BKB. You only need to be right once with a BKB on PA. You only need to be right once with a BKB on a PA to more or less win the fight on that basis alone. And at this stage, there really isn't too much IE can do anymore about the PA. They've more or less lost the ability to control that hero. I will say in Thumbski's defense, though, when you lose an aggro, like a tri-lane on tri-lane that bad, we see the GG coming out now, but when you lose a tri-lane that badly, it really does hurt your mid as well, because now he constantly has to be scared that the enemy supports will be coming for him.
It hurts
He never had the freedom. It doesn't hurt the other lane quite as badly, but because the two supports, if they have the option, will almost always gank a Razor over a Tidehunter. But he always had to play so paranoid that he may have given NP laner more space than he should have, but he always has to be aware that someone is going to be looking to kill him.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say it also hurts the off lane too, because we saw the Tidehunter had to rotate out of the off lane to come in and try to defend the tri lane that was losing so badly, so his experience suffered and his gold suffered from that off lane. The mid lane, yeah, they have to play a little bit more defensively, but also aggressive tri lanes don't typically rotate that much. It's very hard to successfully rotate out of an aggressive tri lane because it gives an opening for the tri lane to jump on to your farming carry, who traditionally your aggressive tri lane farming carry is not a very good solo off laner. And so you don't really want to leave them alone. In this case, it was the Viper, I think. Viper, even with an underleveled Sand King and an underleveled Disruptor with the Mirana there, left alone, Viper could very well die. So I don't know that the Razor had to play that defensively if he had Vision up, which I believe that he did. But it does impact every lane when one lane is doing very poorly, because everybody comes out of the laning phase with such a gold differential and an experience differential that it really, really hurts when you can't rely on your supports to be doing what they need to be doing.
Granted, but bear in mind the strategy ICE employed there. They forced, with their warding, the two supports to be underleveled. They knew then that, and because they had those wards up, they had vision of a lot of random places the supports might want to try to hide if they were going to gank the safe laner. And they also knew, because they were in the woods so much, that IE did not have vision there either. So in a way, ICE forced a situation in which their supports could rotate to leave the Viper alone, and particularly when the first set of wards dropped, and the supports just got the chance to go in and try to get some farm up. And as we mentioned, those two supports, Disruptor and Sand King, are rather greedy. So they need that farm. ICE promptly took that time to rotate and killed Razor.
Yep, and that was the exact window time that we saw that happen. It was just very well timed and very well played by ICE. But anyway, we digress. Thanks for tuning in, guys, to CEVO Season number 5. My name is Gorgon the Wonder Cow. I'm a staff caster here at CEVO. And you can catch me over at GotCowDota, where you can catch up on all my writing and casting here and elsewhere. And I'm joined by Matt, a writer from Join Dota, and you can find his writing over at joindota.com. So thanks for tuning in, guys. And we will be back all week long with additional CEVO action. If you do like CEVO, if you like what we're doing for the North and South American Dota scene, you can pick up a ticket here on Dota TV. It's $10. It will add $250 to the prize pool, which is now over $5,000 for an open registration tournament, which is, I think, the largest North-South American open registration tournament in that. Certainly the largest this season, probably going to be the largest of the year. In addition, we also have a nice little subscribe button that you can hit here on twitch.tv/playcevo1. If you like what we're doing, that helps us support our broadcast and make sure that we're increasing the production value and increasing the regularity of the broadcast over time. So once again, thanks for tuning in, guys. Do you have any last words, Matt?
Very well played by both teams. IE displayed some incredible coordination, but at the end of the day, it always seemed like ICE had A, an answer to it, and B, a much easier draft to play. Despite IE's successive teamfight victories, Ice had such a simple plan, they were able to take it, run with it, and wind up winning the game. A lesson to us all.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we will see you later in the week.